Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Hot Drop, the Battlegrounds podcast. I'm Dano, your host, and let's get into it. For this episode, I'm joined yet again by my co-pilot, Lemonjon, and we're here to discuss some of the topics that were announced during the E3 press conference this week. So, John, welcome back to the show, and let's dive right in. As you probably heard, or definitely heard, since I know you listened to episode 2, there was a lot of exciting news out of E3 this week, and I wanted to get your thoughts on those things. So first up would be the video that they showed during the interview with Player Unknown, which
hmm
was all about the vaulting, climbing, and jumping out of windows dynamic.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Oh man. So I like this idea. So many times have I died on a fence or like trying to get over a fence. It's just really frustrating to deal with these low barriers that you have to get a running start to get over, and you have to like find those cracks in the wall in order to get through them. And they can't be the high cracks. They got to be low enough that you can jump over them. So yeah, I think the vaulting is going to be super fun. I'm wondering how the animation locks will work. Like when you start vaulting, can you like immediately drop down if you start getting shot so you can turn around and shoot somebody? I'm curious how that is going to work because it's not like a fast arcadey vault that happens, especially when you're climbing on top of something,
Right, it's
right?
very slow and very deliberate, and the
Yeah.
animation takes a good 3 to 4 seconds even,
Yeah,
jumping
it's
up
long.
to a
So
high height.
it's not something that you want to do like when you're in a fight unless you have to. But yeah, I'll be curious to see if there's any way to like cancel out of it, just as a way to if you start climbing a wall, if you can drop and shoot at somebody, that'll be interesting to see what how they work with that.
Right. Another thing that they didn't talk about was how does this affect squad games? For example, could I use you to boost me up to an even higher ledge and then like
hmm
reach down for you and pick you up to pull you up? So
Yeah.
I see it being like not only just something that I can do as my solo player, but
Right.
actually something that you could really use as a group to get up to very high levels. And like, does this add? Does this mean that they're going to add some more verticalness to maps, if that's a word?
Ooh.
So like bigger buildings, more of like a
Yeah.
larger
Ruined
city.
skyscrapers.
Exactly. It would be interesting to see what these new maps have in store as far as the geography, whether there's some new cities to check out, whether there's some mountains to climb, and just the ability to use your teammate to access different areas that otherwise wouldn't be accessible to you if you're just a single solo player.
That would be an interesting mechanic to include, like have teammate help on top of the vaulting slash climbing.
Definitely, definitely. Weather, fog, rain, sunset, dusk. What do
You
you
know,
think?
I'm for it. I like the different uh the different weathers that you can have. One of our recent squad wins was a rainy BR, which is always fun. I one that I'm looking forward to is hopefully I don't think they talked about it at E3, but hopefully they do like a snowy setting. I think that would be super cool. You talked about it in your last video or in episode 2, having like a winter setting I think would be super fun and like what they can do with footprints and that kind of thing to track down your opponents. And maybe like a snowy ghillie suit. That would be
Ooh,
cool,
nice.
right?
Yeah, I like that.
Um, but yeah, I think the additional weather changes, I think that just adds another dimension to the game that makes it more interesting. Like as you've said in the past, like the games are never the same, even if you end up in the same spot. Just there are so many variables that can be taken into account to change it up, and this is just another one on top of it.
Definitely. And it'd be interesting to see how these weather patterns sort of affect your gameplay.
hmm
For example, in a raining map right now, I don't think that the water really affects how your car handles, but I could see that being something they add in the future if your car is going to be sliding around the road a whole lot more,
Right.
or
Or
the,
maybe affecting like the Dacia more than the buggy because the
exactly.
buggy can probably deal with it better.
Yeah, and it might make you think. It might be more situational in terms of like what car do I want to take if I'm
hmm
planning to go to this direction, or I'm
Yeah.
planning to go up a hill versus staying on the road.
hmm
Also, like I could see the weather patterns even completely changing the layout of the map. So think about how right now we have these waterways that sort of go through the interior of the map. I mentioned that
Hmm.
I'd like to see more of those in the future, but
Yeah.
if you get the random weather generator to pick snow for you, does that mean that the waters are all iced over
Ooh.
and you can now
Yeah.
run across the rivers? I don't know. That could be a pretty cool addition, and it would really
That would be
change the
so
mechanics of
cool.
the game.
Yeah, no, that would like again, that would be an additional dimension on top of just the weather, like having it actually affect the way things are playing out, or like a super rainy one, maybe flooding a little bit to
Right.
increase to like maybe make some ponds where there are usually valleys. You know that house that's like sunken in the middle of the valley where we always
Yes.
die?
Yep. It's like a blue
The
one-story
the
house in the
blue.
middle of nowhere. Yep.
Yeah, and it's got that horrible chest high wall that's
Yep.
surrounding it. So maybe like that gets flooded out, kind of like the flooded town, in some way. If it's like a super rainy one, that would add some new fun to the maps.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. What do you think about the whole idea of mods? So making this game a platform. I don't know how much there is to say other than, it gives it legs, but what do you
Right.
think, what are some ideas that you can think of that would make for a good mod? What do you
So
want to see in this game going forward?
when I think of mods, like you brought up some really good examples in your video when you brought this topic up. Um, what I think of is like Warcraft 3. I didn't play a lot of it, but I know that there were so many mods that came out of that game that people just they changed the entire structure of the game so that you weren't just fighting minions for things. You were playing like mini games and stuff like that, gathering currency that you would spend. There was just so much that people could do with it, with modding. So when I think of a game that wants to encourage that, I think of like the community's creativity coming out in full force and being able to completely change the game to things that like you and I won't ever think about. So I think not only does it add legs, but it adds like so much. There's so much that you can gain from community resourcing, basically.
Yeah, I mean, look at Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike
Yeah,
was a total conversion mod for Half-Life 1, and
right.
that's I'm gonna get all cute, but honestly, that's the reason we met. Like,
Ah.
uh, but like honestly, like it creates these completely new game modes that attract totally different audiences that
Hmm.
maybe wouldn't have even played the original game,
Hmm.
but they would play a total conversion that turns that game into something that they're more interested in.
Right, or
So,
think about like how I mean BR started out as a mod for Arma, right? That's kind of the baseline for it.
absolutely, yeah.
So because of that, like that's a pretty big mod on top of the game. So modding it even further could create like a whole new game series that births new generations of games.
So great. And speaking of mods, zombies. Zombies
Mm,
were announced as a new game mode that is
hmm.
coming soon. Um, what do you think about zombies?
So on one hand, I want to hate it, but on the other, I like it as an example of what people can do about it. Like I'm thinking old private H1Z1 King of the Kill servers where one person has a gun and everybody else tries to punch them to death or like has bows and arrows and that kind of thing. The like craziness of it is pretty hilarious and like kind of a gimmick, but I think it's a good example for like, oh, check out what we can do, and hopefully you'll be able to do in the future when we give you the power to like change this game how you see fit.
Right, right. Zombies for me right now, I feel have sort of played out. I think they hit their peak when DayZ was a thing a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
Um, but since then, I don't know. I feel like you said, it's a good example of what people could do with the engine, but to announce it as this huge, look at what we're doing with zombies now.
Right.
Like, don't you guys want zombies? Like, I feel like you're a little behind the times
Yeah,
as far as that
it's not
goes.
innovation.
It's not innovation anymore, exactly.
Mm,
And it depends on whether the zombies are AI versus player controlled.
Hmm.
But again, like you said, it could be kind of a gimmick. I don't really feel like I want to play as a zombie. Like, what can I do other than run really fast and jump on people and punch them? Like that, there's nothing really to it. I feel like I would get bored with that pretty quickly. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what they come up with. But I could see this
Hmm.
being a fun game to play every once in a while. But definitely as a side mod, sort of on top of the main game. That maybe I'd check it every once in a while or play it every once in a
Hmm.
while. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna stick to the main game mode, I feel.
Right. So what would be fun, speaking of mods and zombies, like there are those I've played some mods where usually in a shooter there will be one person who doesn't get a gun, but they get like super health and like special powers to be able to fight like a small group of people. That might be fun to take like a fifth of the players in the game, maybe not a fifth, maybe like 10% of the players in the game, and they're on their own team versus everybody else in the game, and give them like special powers, and then everybody else has to loot up as much as they can and try and kill these people as they run around the map with no guns.
Yeah, that
But
that would be cool.
I think it would need a smaller map, but you
Right.
know.
And yeah, that's one of the things I mentioned before. It looks like they are heading in that direction of making
Hmm.
smaller maps. But and that's another thing as far as mods go. Like, are people going to be allowed to make their own maps? It seems like
Ooh,
that's completely reasonable. It's considering it's on the Unreal Engine and pretty much anyone has access to that. So that would be a cool thing to look forward to in
yeah.
the coming years. I would say, as far as this mode is
Yeah,
concerned,
right?
I think it's going to be around for a really long time.
Yeah.
And finally, one last thing, we have the new gun. It is the Groza. It is a
Yeah.
bullpup rifle that shoots 7.62 and is crate only. So what do you feel about that?
So I had no idea what any of that was. I didn't know any of that until I watched your video. So honestly, like
You heard it here first,
the,
everyone.
right, the information that I have of that rifle is equivalent to what you have told me. So that's all I can say is like, oh, cool, new weapon. Oh, use a 7.62. Thanks, Dano.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But I have a couple thoughts. I think they really, really needed another 7.62 rifle. So far, all you have is the M24, which is a sniper rifle, which you can get
Hmm.
only in a crate. You have the Car 98, which seems to be more popular, or as far as spawning. It seems like it's recently I've
Yeah,
been
more
finding it a
common.
lot. More common is what I meant to say. And then obviously the AK is the only other gun with the 7.62 round. So I feel like they really needed to add another one because if you look on the 5.56 side, you've got three rifles that I can think of,
Hmm.
and obviously the M20 or M249, which is the big machine gun
LMG.
found in the crates.
Yeah.
But to make it crate only
Oh,
tells me that's
oh no, wait.
probably going to
Never mind.
be really powerful. Um, so I don't know. It could go in any direction. Player Unknown said it was probably going to be pretty powerful, and it's going to be something that you'll want to go for. But they put a VSS in a crate, and I don't want to go for that. So it depends on what his definition of ultra powerful and exciting to use really is.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking is like vector, right? Like based on what you were talking about with the high rate of fire, like that's what I think about with the vector is
Mm.
like an SMG that shoots very fast and uses 45, so it hits harder. I can't imagine what one that shoots 7.62 would do.
Yeah, it's gonna kick all the way out of your hands. Like it'd be nuts. Um, but yeah, it's something to look forward to for sure.
Yeah,
Could be interesting.
I always love new content.
Absolutely. So that wraps up another show. Thank you, Lemonjon, for coming on today. And thank you for sharing your thoughts about all of these new changes that are coming out in the next couple of months. I'm looking forward to next week because I think we'll have a new update to talk about. And until then, I'll see you guys in game.